So I got to see billion-dollar company making billion-dollar decisions. And I took that same mindset, combined it with who I am, and took it to the nonprofit. And I told myself, if I'm going to go into this industry, we have to have different ways to make revenue and build off of our brand.
Sometimes, entrepreneurs, it's like their own thing, right? And then like the kids they're doing this for their kids, and the kids maybe aren't actually seeing them putting in that work. But the fact that you were included in it, right? And they gave you the confidence to be a part of it and do the sales, that's amazing.
People don't understand, you can't take care of the community if there is no money available.
Yeah.
And I think we often forget that the NFL was a nonprofit until 2015. So they was a nonprofit for 40 years, and that's $1 billion company. I always looked at it like, I don't want to be in an organization that's around for 10, 15 years, and when I step away, the organization falls. At some point, I know I have to hand the baton to the next person. Like, how can I set them up for success? And so
Hi, this is Sienna with the Legacy Circle podcast, and with us today I have Sebastian Sanders.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you. So I usually start off the podcast with the guest introducing themselves. So just tell us who you are and what you do.
My name is Sebastian Sanders, Executive Director and Founder at Sanders Hand. We're a global nonprofit organization teaching students ages 12 to 25 business financial literacy training through the Young Billionaires Club program. We are a career technical state organization with a Texas education agency. I am a business and strategist, community, and author.
Thank you. It's a lot. You got a long resume there.
Yeah. Long.
So I want you to take us through just your childhood. What was Sebastian like in school? What did that community feel like? How was school? How did it take a place in your journey?
Yeah, so growing up, business has been around my family, since I was a little boy. And so my father was an entrepreneur, my mother was an entrepreneur. And so growing up, you want to be, your like your role models. And my dad was always my role model. So I remember early on, like 3, maybe 5, traditional kid wants toys and Spider-Man and stuff like that. I always wanted play money and play phones. So I go to the Family Dollar, get my fake money, and have my little cell phone, trying to be like my dad. And that's what I had as a kid. So I always knew business was the route I wanted to go. Leadership was installed in me at a young age. So my dad always challenged me to be a young man, and a leader. And I've always took leadership roles. So whether that was a captain of the basketball team or the lead role in a school play or being like the school speaker, I've always found some happiness in doing those things. And so growing up, I think the roots was implanted. When I got to college is when I truly started to find my identity. And that's when I really deep dove into business. And so, I always tell people, giving for me started at a young age. I was 12 years old. And I remember my parents was like, hey, do you want Christmas gifts or do you want money? So as a 12-year-old, naturally I want money. And so my parents gave me $500, and my dad was like, before you go buy yourself anything, you have to make sure you take care of the family. Get your mama a gift, your brother a gift, grandma a gift. And naturally, as a 12-year-old, you're telling me you're giving me $500, but I have to spend at least half my money on family. I'm mad, right? So I'm like, man, I should just got gifts. I didn't like that. So the first year I was really annoyed. And I never forget, this was the year like the Cool Grey 11s had came out. And I really wanted my shoes, but I didn't have enough left over because I had bought my family stuff and I had bought some other stuff, so I couldn't get my shoes. So I was really mad. The following year, I never forget, my granny called me. She's like, hey, baby, I got my gift. I got her Real Lobster gift card. And she was so happy. She's like, I'm gonna take myself on a date. And it made me feel good. So I think giving was installed at a young age. And I think it transferred over into me starting a nonprofit because my parents installed in me, those leadership qualities. So I really wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for the way my parents raised me and the things that they, installed in me at a young age.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And like just those lessons, right? So what were your parents' businesses?
Yeah, so my dad, he was into the dog business. So at a young age, I think I was maybe 8, he had brought my grandmother some property in Melville, Texas. And I think it's like 2 acres in the front. She had her house, she had her trailer. In the back, we just had nothing but open land. And so the goal was he was gonna just build like a garage and he was gonna put his cars over there. But for some reason he changed it and he built a dog kennel. And so I think I was like maybe 9 years old, and we had like imported over 100 dogs from all over the world. And at the time, I think it was mainly just pit bulls and bull mastiffs. Those were kind of like the popular dogs in the early 2000s. And I was like 9 years old out there with those dogs, like every day, feeding them, taking care of them, and all that type of stuff. And we'll sell dogs. When we have puppies, we'll sell. My dad would kind of have me doing like the sales pitches and working with people. So I got to do that from like 9 maybe till I was like 15 years old. And over the years, we started to just get more dogs and transfer and all that. So that was kind of my first touch of business. I sold CDs at some point when I was like 13. So I always had little side hustles. And then my mom, she's always been in beauty. So she's always had her own shops and she's been a private contractor with the different facilities. So got to see both of them, but be their own boss is what really inspired me to, go into entrepreneurship.
Yeah. Um, I mean, that's crazy because, I think it's sometimes, entrepreneurs, it's like their own thing, right? And then
Yeah.
like they're doing this for their kids and the kids maybe aren't actually seeing them putting in that work. But the fact that you were included in it, right? And they
Yeah.
gave you the confidence to be a part of it and
Yeah.
do the sales, that's amazing. So in the classroom, did you obviously you have the community back home in the classroom? Did you feel like you had that support as well and those tools?
I think public school for me was good because it exposed me to life lessons that taught me how to be a better person. And so I think it gave me good social skills. I would say most of my business learning came from my parents, to be quite honest. And that's not to discredit the public system. And I think the public education has made great products. But I think the curriculum that we came up learning, you really didn't learn a lot of stuff until you was actually taught it by life and really just, being hit by things. And so
Yeah.
I think public school allowed me to grow my personality and become social, but the business I learned from my parents.
That's wonderful. So was there any? So take us to when you were in college. What were the intention? Like, where did you want to take your career?
So yeah, I went to school for business management, graduated in 2019. So I always knew I wanted to do business, right? I think I didn't know exactly what type of business. I was like, oh, should I do marketing and accounting? But I fell in love with management because I just fell in love with being a leader. And so my goal when I got to UTSA was my sophomore year. I want to get into the College of Business, and I want to get an internship, and I want to graduate and go into the oil and gas. And so everything kind of flipped upside down because year by year things started to change. I started to get more exposure, and I started to see like, okay, maybe I'm not going to go into oil and gas. Maybe I'll do the nonprofit work, or maybe I'll do something else. And so college for me allowed me to build a network. It allowed me to learn from others that were all across the world, but it allowed me to have the platform because without UTSA, I wouldn't be able to utilize my campus friends and the members to volunteer for the organization. I wouldn't know how to do certain things and use certain resources if I didn't have UTSA. And I didn't get my first big job without going to UTSA. And so I
Yeah.
remember a year before I graduated, I already had my paperwork signed. I already accepted my job offer with PepsiCo, and they told me, hey, you'll be moving to Oklahoma City. And so that wouldn't be possible without the University of Texas San Antonio because that was a Pepsi account. So a Pepsi account means that's an account that has nothing but Pepsi products. And so with them being the Pepsi sponsor, they recruited, from UTSA. And so, college for me was kind of like the stepping stone and the platform. And it helped me out a lot because it allowed me to just grow in areas that I couldn't do anywhere else.
Yeah, that's crazy because I mean, you really utilized what the whole college experience
Yeah.
for and got everything out of it. That's amazing. So then, yeah, I mean, walk us through that. So then you were in corporate life for a while. So how then when did that transition into entrepreneurship or what was the next step?
Yeah, so I was in corporate for about 4.5 years, I would say. So I started off in Oklahoma City. I was a sales manager. I was over the retail large format accounts. So in Pepsi words, that's a sales manager over grocery chains. So I did that for about 2.5 years during the pandemic. And we were, kind of considered an essential business, so we never slowed down. The business actually took off when people were at home because they were buying so much soda and eating stuff. And so I did that for about 2.5 years. I had a team of 13 sales reps. My portfolio was anywhere from $8 to $9 million in annual revenue. So it was a great opportunity for me, fresh out of college, to get thrown out there.
Yeah.
And managing people, and then also managing people through COVID because we were frontline workers. So as you can imagine, one person goes down, I'm naturally stepping up. So it was a pretty big, tall task, but it taught me so much. So I did that for 2.5 years. I came home back to Houston in 2021, and I transferred into supply chain management. And I began doing work at the Rosenberg production plant for Frito-Lay. So same company, just different division. And I got to oversee the network. And so the network was about 130 CDL drivers. We were driving anywhere from Texas to Louisiana. Sometimes I had guys going to like Tennessee or maybe California, just depending on what we had. And we delivered about $3 million in chips daily, through my network. And so I got to do that for 2 years. And I think every step of the way, I learned something in business that helped me be the businessman that I am today. But ultimately, when you have a calling in your life and God is pushing you to do something, it gets harder each and every day if you don't go and choose that calling. And I think God knew I wouldn't walk away from this big role and this big salary unless you forced me to. And I
Yeah.
think as I started to get deeper into the business and I redesigned the organization and we started to have a sense of purpose and direction, it was only a matter of time where I was going to have to take that leap. And the leap came by God closing all the doors in the corporate world and shutting down the doors and putting me in a position, in a very uncomfortable position, letting me know like, hey, I need you to go out and do this. And I'll never forget, I was in HR because I was kind of going back and forth at the time with management. We were really seeing eye to eye on a professional level. And I knew this had nothing to do with me or them. This is more so of God putting me in a position to move away and walk away. And so I remember I was going into a meeting with HR on a Tuesday to kind of talk about my paperwork and what I wanted to do next for my career. And she said, hey, can you wait outside for a little bit? I'm meeting with somebody. So I sat outside and I got a phone call. It's from Alief Independent School District. So I graduated from Alief. And it was a school district. It was the superintendent's office. They were calling me. They were saying, hey, we heard about the program. We want to bring you guys to our Summerfest. Are you able to come meet us on Friday to discuss it with the team? And that's how I knew. That was what the call from God letting me know, hey, this is the direction you need to go. And I went in there and meeting with HR. I said, hey, I appreciate it, but I'm going to step away and do my own thing. And I walked away 4.5 years ago and been working in nonprofit industry since.
Because the beginning of the program was the college tours, right?
Yeah, we started off at UTSA 2017. So the organization was founded in 2017.
Okay.
When I was at UTSA. So we started off just seeing how many kids we can help go to college. When we first started off, we were just a bunch of young people who had a bunch of energy and we just wanted to help kids, but we really didn't have a program. We didn't have direction. Barely had any money being raised. And so it was a passion project in the beginning. It wasn't until 2021 when I started to do some nonprofit trainings is when I developed the Young Billionaires Club. And that's a program that was created for the students, by the students. So from 2017 to 2021 was just kind of us building our name up. 2021 is when we started to really have a concrete organization and program, and that's how we was able to scale.
Wow. So what? How were you guys getting the kids to do the programs? I mean, to go to the schools in the beginning.
In the beginning, well, it was really a lot of me cold calling. So I remember like nights I would reach out to like 100, 200 different schools, and I'm just shooting my shot, emailing.
Yeah.
I think out of 200, 3 schools might have responded. And it was Allen B. Shepherd Middle School in San Antonio, Texas. And I think it was South San High School. They gave me an opportunity. They allowed me to come in and speak. And from there, we just started to build. And then kind of once you do a really good job and you start to circulate, people just start tossing you around and giving you, referrals. And that's really how we grew. But honestly, it was me just calling and emailing, and only 1 or 2 people picked up the phone.
That's crazy. And
Yeah.
I mean, and then your draw to nonprofits. I mean, I think from your entrepreneurship, just I'll say, just entrepreneurship spirit that you already had, and seeing that with your family, and then you go through corporate. I'm sure that some of that's still there. So was it just kind of like, I mean, not to get into your business, but like in terms of making money, like how did that play a part in like you doing this? You know what I mean?
Yeah, because the average nonprofit, people look at it like there's no money being made, right? But people don't understand. You can't take care of the community if there is no money available.
Yeah.
And I think we often forget that the NFL was a nonprofit until 2015. So they was a nonprofit for 40 years, and that's $1 billion company. And Harvard University is a nonprofit. So these top tier organizations, businesses, and programs are all nonprofits. They just have a different business model. So I think for me, my background in business and my natural born entrepreneurship and hustle allowed me to build an organization that's a nonprofit in paperwork, but we have a for-profit business plan. So typically, the average millionaire has anywhere from 8 streams of income. We built the organization to have 8 different streams because I always looked at it like this. I don't want to be a nonprofit that's $1 away from being shut down. Because if that's the case, then I cannot serve the kids that I have now, but also the future kids. So the way we built this is, okay, we have grants, you have contracted services, you have products and services. We had the thrift store for about 2.5 years. We had different ways to monetize our brand and our mission. And I built that because I spent time in corporate and I got to see how Pepsi has Pepsi soda, but people don't understand Pepsi has like 100, 200 other drinks. And we have Gatorade, they had Gatorade, you had the Starbucks in the can, you have Sierra Mist, and then you had the Frito-Lay, you had the chips, you had all the chip brands. So I got to see billion-dollar company making billion-dollar decisions. And I took that same mindset, combined it with who I am, and took it to the nonprofit. And I told myself, if I'm going to go into this industry, we have to have different ways to make revenue and build off of our brand. because I always looked at it like I don't want to be in an organization that's around for 10, 15 years, and when I step away, the organization falls. At some point, I know I have to hand the baton to the next person, but how can I set them up for success? And so I think that's our kind of our thing that made us different, and it's kind of like our secret sauce. But we have a very for-profit business model that allowed us to have a full functional organization.
Yeah, and so take us to through yeah, your idea behind the what are these different pieces? You mentioned I know the thrift store just recently. You guys closed that, but I
Yeah.
mean, even having that, like having the kids actually use their skills, what they're learning in your program, and then actually, putting into action. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
So yeah, take us through all these different things that you guys have going on.
Yeah, so the first thing we have traditional in-person programming. So our kids spend anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks with us, and they're recruited two ways: whether we're working with a school district partner site or they're recruited out of our thrift store location, which we closed down, but we moved into a more of a private location. So you have that. Then you have the online campus where our kids can take the program virtually. That's global. That's any and everywhere. You can take it via your phone or via your laptop. There's a $35 one-time enrollment fee. But right now we're doing 1,000 free vouchers for Texas-based students only. So you have the online campus, you have in-person programming, you have the Young Billionaires Club flashcard. So we have these nice little cute flashcards for students ages 8+, and they get to learn business and financial literacy terms at home. So very similar to Uno, parents can buy those flashcards for their kids and learn the same terms that we teach in our program.
Yeah.
You have the Young Billionaires Club chapter book, which is a typical book for students ages 12 to 25, and it's a chapter book guide, but it's also a workbook where our kids get to go in, read, and kind of like journal their business plan after each chapter. So we have different ways to get the message out. You have the traditional merchandise. We have t-shirts, hoodies. We have contracted services where we program and we do contracted and we'll charge per hour. So we have so many different ways that we program, and we try to be very diverse in the way that we program. We had the thrift store for about 2 years. So we piloted that project to really get our name out there, but give our kids a facility to go work out of. And so we did that for about 2 years. That was a very successful pilot because it allowed us to really build branding, marketing, visibility in the community, but also build trust. And so throughout those different ways, we've been able to really just build a full-blown program, because I looked at it like this: if I can only offer the program in one way, I'm only going to be able to serve one community. And to me, from a business standpoint, going back to Pepsi, there's no growth from that. And so I always looked at it like, okay, what can we do to be different? Because we're not the only organization that's teaching kids financial literacy, right? I understand that. But what makes us stand out? And one of the things I noticed was now kids have changed. COVID has changed the way kids learn. And so I looked at it like the future of the program, in person will be around maybe for the next decade or 3 decades or whatever. But at some point, kids are only going to want to learn virtually because some kids learn better virtually. So with that, how do I bring out an option that way a kid say, hey, I can't go to in person, but I can take it on my phone? And that's when we built the online campus. But how about those kids that say, hey, I don't like any of that, but I just want to learn on my own? That's where the flashcards and the book comes in, the online campus. So we have so many different ways to where it's kind of hard for you as a parent, as an educator, as a student to say, no, I don't want to be a part of the program, because we have so many different ways we can bring it to you.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. I mean, like you said, you're able to get as many kids as possible into it. So explain to us what that program looks like. What do you guys talk about? What are they learning?
Yeah, so it's a 6 to 8 week program. And so typically you're learning all elements on marketing, entrepreneurship, financial literacy, etiquette, supply chain, customer service. The idea and the philosophy behind it is, I know that every student is not going to start their own business. I understand that.
Yeah.
But these life skills that we teach you, this allows you to go be successful in life after high school, whether you want to be an engineer, doctor, or a lawyer. So our thing is, how do we prepare kids for life after high school? And that's what the Young Billionaire Club does. And business is the easiest way to teach those skills, because you learn something in business and then that could translate later on in its life. And so 6 to 8 weeks, our kids are usually with us maybe once or twice a week, just all depending on availability and scheduling. The sessions last anywhere from an hour and a half up to 2 hours, and they're very hands-on lessons. So not only are we teaching you this, but each week we're tasking you with projects where you have to actually build a business. So the goal is go through the program, and then the last day of the program is graduation, but it's a pitch competition. So each week you have been tasked to work on certain things, and you have to come with a full-blown business presentation. And you compete for funding. So we're giving you the education, we're giving you the experience, but the biggest thing that small business fail at is capital, lack of capital. So we looked at it like, okay, these are young kids, they may not have jobs yet. They're going to start these businesses, but they're going to have a lack of capital. So let's put them in a pitch competition, make it competitive. Our winner walks away with funding. And so that's kind of the full breakdown of the program. The online campus is in the same format, it's just virtually. We have a state-aligned curriculum, so our curriculum fits the Texas Education Knowledge System standards. So every 2 years, we're updating the curriculum to make sure we're fitting the national rubric for education. And we are a aligned career technical state organization with the Texas Education Agency. So the future of the program is going to look like those regional, state, and national competitions. So very similar to FBLA, DECA, and FFA, those national organizations that high school students get to be a part of. The Young Billionaires Club is a new CTSO. And so in terms of being an after school program or just being a youth program, with the TEA stamping us as a new CTSO, you have one of the actually the highest stamping approval from a state level, a federal level, and a local level when it comes down to programming. So this allows us to program on a high level, but allows us to be embedded in the curriculum. So going into the new school year, teachers, educators, students in their textbooks, when they're looking at entrepreneurship, they get to look at the different clusters that's offered in the state of Texas. You're going to see Young Billionaires Club is going to be in your textbook as a business, marketing, and finance cluster.
Nice. That's amazing. And I did want to mention, yeah, that I was able to go to your program and see the kids and do the pitches. And I mean, I was seeing kids from so many different age groups and with their parents, and they, what, you gave them like 3 minutes to do a pitch, and and they were all so confident in themselves and like excited about just saying, you know, creating something and sharing it with other people. Share with us some of like those success stories that you've seen.
Yeah, I would say, so we had a young lady come through in 2021. This was, I think this is during COVID, so everything was virtual at the time. And we had an annual scholarship for $1,000, really to help students with really good business ideas get the capital. And she was a HBCU college student at the time, maybe a sophomore. And she won the pitch, and she went on to create this shoe brand called Vaila Shoes. It's for women with larger foot sizes. Young black girl. I want to say she may be 25, 26 right now as far as an age. But since then, she's been in Essence. She's been in BET, Forbes. She's been on Vogue. And now she's selling worldwide in Macy's, in person and online. And when I came across her application, I knew she would go very far because she designed a nice looking shoe, but she's solving a problem for a niche, like, you know, market.
Yeah.
And when I came across it, I said, yeah, she's going to be a star. And I remember, like, her pitch, everything was well put together. And I want to say, like, less than a year later, she graduated. I don't think she's probably ever worked, you know, in corporate. She's been working for herself, but she's been everywhere. And when I saw her launch at Macy's, it just meant so much to me because, not taking any credit for her success, but when you invest into a student and you get to see the potential, but then you see the potential actually manifest, it just lets you know what can be done if we get our kids the right resources and the right opportunities. So I always brag about her everywhere I go because she's a sense of hope for kids that don't think that they can actually do it. Especially being a young black girl going to HBCU, seeing her success story just makes me more motivated to serve more kids and see what more of our kids can do. So she's one of our kids that we brag on. We have another young lady who's actually at the event that you were at. Her name is Kaylin. She's been with the program since 2023. When I got with her, she was in 8th grade. We was at the Summerfest with A-Leaf, and she was one of our standout students. She won the pitch competition, and since then, she was the first kid that we actually hired at the store. She was a middle school kid, so she came in on the weekends. Nice. And she's now kind of like our lead program experience person. So she comes in and teaches. She does all the speeches. She's like my voice. You know, I let her do all the talking now, and I just take a step back. But since she's been with us, you know, her communication skills have increased. Her confidence has increased. And she's been exposed to so many different opportunities. And her mom is like always there. Her mom was actually at the event. She's there to pick her up, there to drop her off. And seeing a middle school student go from an 8th grader, I think she's a sophomore now, but seeing her mature over the years and just seeing her step out and be a part of the program, it just truly means a lot. And so those are some of our 2 kids who have came through the program, have stayed with the program even afterwards, and are doing some amazing things.
That's amazing. And I mean, you're especially like the age group, right? Like you said, okay, yes, for someone in college, but also someone in middle school level, and giving them something, an opportunity that they otherwise would not have seen or have opportunity to do. So what is next for Sanders Hand?
What's next for us? You know, now with us being a new CTS, so I think the future of the organization is really embedded in becoming a household name in Texas education and Texas entrepreneurship for youth. Our goal is to have one of the most prominent online campuses for students virtually, whether that's embedded into the actual school system or in the after school or even homeschool. We want to have one of those most prominent locations that where a parent knows, I want to sign my child up for that. And I mean globally. What we're working on now is how do we prepare for the future of education, the future of entrepreneurship, and how do we prepare our kids for that? And so with us moving out of the store phase, we're focusing on more programming, because at the end of the day, 20 years from now, we want to be a curriculum that kids have to go through. And when I say go through, like most times you had electives that you got to choose. We want to be one of those electives that for a semester you have to actually take this course to learn business and financial literacy so we can prepare you for life out of high school. And so I think what we're working on now is really taking advantage of the opportunities that we have here in Texas and really, really growing that phase out, but then actually going global with it. We do have a school in Ghana, Africa, and so they're working on being integrated into the Young Billionaires Club. So I'm very excited for the future of them. But here, United States, domestically, our goal is to touch all 50 states because everywhere you go, there's going to be a child in a community that needs what we're offering. And so with that being said, how do we set up satellite, companies or satellite locations? How do we set up virtual components and then eventually grow into a phase to where we have market managers that either manage a state or a city that has a need, that has a growing population of students. And so my overall thing is how do we grow sustainable? How do we grow strategically? And how do we serve more kids? 5 years ago, if you'd asked me what's the goal, I would have said, hey, I want this big headquarters location and all of that. But all of those things are nice, but now it's like the future is here, and you don't necessarily need a physical location to serve students. Yeah. So with that being said, how do we prepare ourselves for the future? And by doing that, we have to take care of the programming, make sure the program is intact, make sure the data is there, pre-test, post-test, surveys, key needs, and assessments, and then we have a great student body. And then 10 years from now, I want to start training my next CEO, but I want to have a student government group that's running the organization. So how we have politicians that oversee a district, I want a student government group that are phased out, that are spread out, and they're overseeing the organization because this was created for the students, by the students. But if I don't bring the kids along with the growth, it's going to be hard for us to grow.
That's amazing. And yeah, I mean, having the kids' feedback, right? Yeah. And what has been some of the kids' feedback just from the program?
Yeah, so a lot of the feedback we receive is overall, successful, right? And I think it's easy to say that, but kids don't lie. And when they don't like something or don't like a person, you will know very fast. And so we've always received some really good feedback. We do a key needs assessment at the end of the program, just so I can kind of see what the kids are going through. They always talk about the marketing, the pitch competition. All of the kids want to win. So you always say, hey, can you give us more money? But I'm like, hey, life doesn't work like that. I can't give all of y'all money, right? I have to have some type of competitiveness. So that's one of the things we're working on. How do we get them more funding opportunities? But overall, kids always say, I learn stuff that I don't learn in school, but I'm learning it in a fun way. Because I think business and financial literacy is really more on a adult level, but a middle school child can learn it if you break it down and make it fun. And you have to meet the kids where they are. And I think as a program for us, I didn't want to have something that was way over their heads and they didn't truly understand, because you have to think, if that's an inner city child, they're not going to understand it if you're teaching it on a high level. Not saying that that child is not smart, but certain times their community circumstances prevents them from learning. And so how do we meet them where they are? And so that's what I try to build the program out of. And we receive a lot of positive feedback, but I think the feedback that really hits home the most is the parents. Because, you were just talking about this. I've done work with other organizations, and the biggest disconnection from a lot of older organizations to younger ones, they don't know how to connect the parents, because you have to think there's a new wave of parents, and it's not the same parents that were 20 years ago. And so how do you integrate them and bring them along? Because the average parent is going to treat it like a drop-off thing, pick up and drop off. That's okay for a child that's mature enough, but some kids aren't there yet. So I want you to be a part of this experience with your child. That way you can see the value. And so those are some of the things that we're working on to increase that feedback and meeting the kids where they are.
Yeah, and I like that you said that, because you guys encourage the parents, right? Even with the 6-week programs to be involved. I think I've seen that in some of your videos. Yeah. So it's a key and important thing. And I want to start closing up, but what are some, when you're in these programs, I think you guys get such a unique opportunity to see these kids, like you said, like have fun and see them in a different light versus who they are probably in school, right? Yeah. So what are some of those things that you've seen, like some of the issues or just some of the things that, like, okay, maybe schools should be focusing on some of these things?
I think getting the kids' feedback, right? Because, we have curriculums that we have to follow, and I know public education has that, but I think if you incorporate the students' feedback, you truly understand how to teach them. Because we have to understand, education is also competing with social media. A child can get on TikTok and learn how to do something, and they can only learn that way. They can only learn within that 30 seconds to a minute reel, and they are going to that. The dopamine is pushing them towards that. Yeah. So as an educator and as a youth leader, how do you get in front of that, and how do you be more innovative? And I think public school has to find a way to be more innovative, interactive, but show them real life skills, because these kids are getting exposed to stuff at an early age, whether it's good or whether it's bad, but they aren't starting to grow up a lot faster because of cell phones and social media. How do you get in front of that by showing them real life skills so they don't feel like school is a waste? Because if you go visit a high school, the average high school senior is like, oh, I haven't learned anything, hasn't prepared me for nothing, I'm just gonna go out there. And that breaks the heart of anybody, because you're like, they spend so much of their time there, spend 12 years there, 8 hours a day, and they're not learning anything to prepare them for life after high school. What are we doing wrong? So I think from an educator standpoint, you have to figure out how to make that curriculum relatable. And I think once you can break that mold and you build trust within the students, you get to see them perform in a different way. I think all of our teachers are there because they care for the kids. Well, I will hope so. So I think that part is taken care of. How do you make the curriculum relatable? And so I think we have to go back to the drawing board and realize what we did 40, 50 years ago in those textbooks are not going to work anymore. Because if we want to stay ahead, especially with AI is also changing the way our kids think. Because as a child, you don't necessarily have to study anymore. I can go AI and type in whatever I want. I got the answers. But is that really preparing them for life after high school? So I think we have to go back to the drawing board and redesign education to fit the curriculum moving forward.
Yeah, I love that. And okay, so this is the Legacy Circle podcast. So our final question is, what is the legacy that you'd like to leave behind?
The legacy that I would like to leave behind, that's a really good question. You know, I think at first I always wanted to just be the richest or whatever, but I think over time, you realize, you know, the riches and everything, you necessarily can't take it with you, but I can leave a legacy. And so my legacy that I want to leave behind is I want to be the person that started the evolution of education, but started the bridge between education and entrepreneurship for youth, but start a program that bridges it all together, from kids that's coming from the inner city to a wealthy community, wherever you come from. I want you to be able to come in this program and learn business financial literacy that's going to change not only your life, but your family's life. And I think throughout my lifetime, I have to have the understanding of knowing that I may not necessarily change it, but if I can spark the mind that's going to change it, or start the revolution that's going to change it, and we keep that tradition going, it's going to do a lot for us. And so I've always wanted to have the Tupac effect on the community, right? And I say that because he died in 1996, but 25 years later, you're still using his songs in universities and in classrooms to dissect and understand. And he's still being talked about, and he died 30-something years ago. So I want to have that last legacy that's last longer in a positive light, but I want to start something that's going to change people's life for the better. And I want to, when I'm dead and gone, that people to look back and say, Sebastian Sanders started this program, and this program has done this. And I want that to be a part of the curriculum and a part of Black history. And so that's the legacy that I want to leave. And so that's what I strive towards each and every day.
Thank you. So just share with us how we can support, how kids can connect with you guys.
Yeah, so you can follow us on Instagram and Facebook at SandersHand.org. You can visit our website at www.sandershand.org. Visit our website. You can join the Young Billionaires Club. You can submit an application on our website. If you want to volunteer with the students, you can do the same thing. But if you also just want to donate to our organization, you can do all of it on our website. You can reach out to us via email. We would definitely love to connect and build a partnership and serve more students. You can connect with me personally at Sebastian J. Sanders on Instagram. And you can also just reach out to me via email, link in my bio. We can talk further.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.